One thing that a lot of Democrats even do wonder about, and that is Hunter Biden, your son, was getting paid a lot of money to serve on the board of a Ukrainian energy company facing serious corruption charges. You were the vice president running point on Ukraine. The average Joe hears that and says, that sounds fishy. What's your understanding of what your son was doing for an extraordinary amount of money?
I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it. And there's nobody.
Well, you've had a lot of time. Isn't this something you want to get to the bottom of?
No, because I trust my son.
But
no, because I trust my son. I didn't know what was going on. According to Joe Biden, I had no idea what Hunter Biden was doing, working at Burisma. Now, understand, Joe Biden has been caught lying on multiple occasions, and I would suspect and suggest that he is probably lying here. And he's lying for an obvious reason. If you are, let's say, a viceroy of Ukraine, and your son is working at a radically corrupt energy company, is there any level of collusion, or is there any level of corruption between those things? And why does your son have this job? He has no experience in oil and gas, and he has no experience living in Ukraine. So why on earth is he getting that job? Most people, average Joe, cup of coffee, at a bar, taking a sip. If you ask them, they would say he's trading off of Joe Biden's last name. The fact that Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States, the fact that Joe Biden was basically the viceroy, and if you needed somebody to, let's say, open doors for you, or if you needed somebody to, let's say, make connections for you, having the vice president's kid with the last name Biden demonstratively helps you do that. It looks bad for Biden because it looks corrupt. So Biden is going to say, I knew nothing about my son working at the energy company, as if Joe Biden just never talked to his son for years. And that in not talking to his son for years, what his son was doing for a job, according to Joe Biden, just never came up, despite the fact that they were working basically in the same place. Meaning, Joe Biden being the viceroy and his son being a part of a radically corrupt energy company, and in this case, Burisma, making $50,000, some people say more than that, a month, to do so. This is not the only time that Biden has been corrupt. Biden has a history of corruption with this notion of Biden Inc. And that is kind of what I want to dig into, because something has happened today that is, I want to call it momentous, but momentous is not really the right word for it. The New York Times has made an admission, and it's an admission that the New York Post have been attacked for, that the New York Post have been put in Twitter jail for, that the New York Post have been called Russian propaganda for, and that the New York Times has just come out to say today and said was correct, that their reporting was correct. Specifically speaking, Hunter Biden's laptop. Meaning, Miranda Devine wrote this book, Laptop from Hell. And in that book, she gets across many of the connections and stuff, but a lot of the things that were coming out of the laptop that Hunter Biden kept losing. Hunter Biden lost like 3 laptops, or just kept, having them fall around in weird places. And considering what he had on those laptops, it makes it that much weirder that he couldn't keep them in his pocket or keep it somewhere. I mean, in one case, he's talking to a working girl, basically a prostitute. In other cases, he's balancing M&Ms on his penis. But those are the more salacious parts. The parts that could cause big trouble for Hunter Biden and major trouble for one Joe Biden, if Republicans are able to take the House and the Senate, which I strongly suggest they probably will, are the emails that attest to what Joe Biden here is saying here is a lie. They're emails that implicate Joe Biden into some of the corrupt business dealings. For him to say, I don't know what my son was doing, and then you find him at a meeting with various people at Burisma, at the energy company that his son was working at, well, I look at that and say, Joe Biden is lying. And there's nothing up to this point to indicate that those emails were not true. They were never denied. And there's nothing to indicate that those laptops were not Hunter Biden's. Again, they were not denied. So if the laptops are Hunter Biden's, and emails are also legit, and what gives evidence and credence to that is that you have pictures and everything else belonging to Hunter Biden in those laptops, again, including him looking lovingly to the eyes of a prostitute, him talking to that prostitute, sometimes I would imagine prostitutes, that anonymous ear of sorts is probably very soothing to the person, to the man, especially if that man is on a crack bench and he is balancing M&Ms on his penis. I want to dig into this because the fact that the New York Times is finally admitting, yes, the laptop is real, and yes, the emails are real. Oh, and yes, that meeting that New York Post wrote about that people call Russian propaganda with the other people from Burisma did indeed take place. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. If you guys are digging this content, please like, share, and of course, subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. Also, definitely check us out on Rumble. So, rumble.com/faultlines. We have gotten up to 450 people. We're trying to reach 500. So definitely come and join us if you enjoy this show. My co-host, Farron Franzak, she is astonishingly good. I always say they brought on the eye candy when they brought her onto the show. And she has, honestly, her and I, and the chemistry on air is just astonishingly good. And it does so almost automatic. So definitely check us out. But let's get into the story. New York Times, come to Jesus. Come to Jesus. Joe Biden has a history of corruption. So when Joe Biden is basically saying here, I didn't know anything about my son or anything like that, Joe Biden also has a history of lying. When Joe Biden says, I was there with Mandela and they threw me in a jail cell, that didn't happen. I was out there liberating movie theaters, that didn't happen. I looked Putin into the eye and I told him he was a killer, that didn't happen. Over and over again, he says things that often just aren't true. And again, I suspect this is also one of those things. Here's the evidence for it. And my point here is Hunter Biden is in deep shit here. And so is Joe Biden. Hunter Biden has been under investigation by the Justice Department, who he paid off a huge amount of taxes, but the department is looking into his business dealings across the world. And I would say they only need to look into Miranda Devine's book, The Laptop from Hell, to try to get to what they need to get to. But the rub is, they've also been looking at Hunter Biden's emails from those laptops. From that laptop. The same laptop that everybody kept saying was Russian propaganda and that they put New York Post in Twitter jail for. Now, years later, after Joe Biden is in office, after the threat of him losing the Trump because of the information that was revealed in those laptops was passed, now we can have a conversation about it. Total coincidence. Total coincidence. Let's go here. Ryan Grimm. Biden Inc. I'm showing this in order to get across that there's a history of corruption in regards to the way Biden leverages his name and his family leverages Biden's name for profit. They've been doing it for years, even when he was in Delaware, but especially once he got to Congress. Ryan Grimm, take it away.
Biden's brother then becomes a lobbyist in the 80s representing tobacco attorneys, while Joe Biden is a key senator on this giant tobacco settlement and legislation.
Wow.
Hunter Biden graduates in 1996, immediately goes to work for where? MBNA. People who are a little bit too young might not remember, they were the credit card company in this country. They've since been absorbed by Bank of America. Right. But at the time, they were pushing for bankruptcy reform so that people couldn't discharge medical debts, couldn't discharge credit card debts, private student loans. And they make him a senior vice president. So Hunter Biden then serves till 2001, goes and becomes a lobbyist, federal lobbyist, while his dad is a senator.
A very powerful senator.
He's getting earmarks. His firm is representing University of Delaware, paying the firm millions of dollars. University of Delaware is getting tens of millions of dollars in earmarks. And that whole time, he's still getting paid $100,000 a year as a consultant for MBNA.
Wow.
Who knows what he's doing. Biden is leading the push on bankruptcy reform. He finally gets bankruptcy reform enacted in 2005, and then Hunter Biden's consultancy ends in 2005. And actually, after 2005 is when you see the student loan crisis really take off.
Right.
And
it was this loan.
In this legislation, they said, well, you can't really discharge private student loans anymore, and so private student loans
exploded.
Wow.
Biden Inc., ladies and gentlemen. Got a student loan you can't discharge? Got loan debt? Thank one Joe Biden. Let's go to the next one. This is Hunter Biden once they get into Congress. And this question comes up about, what is Hunter Biden going to do for a job? He's a crackhead, failed out of the military. We got to do something for him. We can't have him looking bad with Biden running for president, or for that matter, being vice president. However, we don't like the corruption stuff. So maybe we can find him another job that doesn't have or involve him basically leveraging his dad's name and reputation again. Good luck on that front, even as Biden becomes vice president.
Team guy, it's just a complete mess. And so now we're into 2008, 2009. He teams up with John Kerry's stepson,
Right.
to form another private equity firm. And when he gets the offer to be on Burisma's board, this is the Ukrainian gas company, Chris Hines tells him, look, man, don't do this.
Yeah.
Looks terrible.
Bad look.
What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
Ukrainian natural gas firm? Your dad is overseeing Ukrainian policy. Right now, he's the vice president. Why do you think? And Biden's like, Hunter Biden says, I'm going to do it anyway. They slap Hunter Biden's face on the front of the website,
Right. Yep.
$50,000 a month.
Yep.
During this $50,000 a month escapade, he's also going on a crack binge, going in and out of rehab, while he's still getting paid.
Right.
Like, that's an amazing job.
Which is exactly, what Joe Biden stands for in his architecting of the criminal justice system is.
Exactly. While Hunter Biden was a crackhead, Joe Biden spent 40 years, or like 47 years of his life, throwing black people in cages. Whereas his son, who was a crackhead, still disparity between crack and cocaine, crack cheaper. And so African Americans and people who were basically poor would end up with much longer sentences as compared to, let's say, people who were wealthier and would be on crack. Well, Hunter Biden was on crack, and yet he was able to get $50,000 a month because of his last name. I tell you this, many a crackhead would love to make $50,000 a month, and yet don't have the last name Biden. But Hunter was born with that last name, and as such, not only was he able to make a ton of money in what looks to be ridiculously corrupt dealings and using his dad's last name, but he was also able to do a lot of crack without going to prison for it. Gotta love that last name Biden, man. Gotta love it. Let's keep going. So New York Post comes out right here. Smoking gun reveals how Hunter Biden introduced Ukrainian businessman to VP dad. Now, the New York Post have been putting out a lot of articles discussing either the laptops, going into some of the things that were in those laptops, and of course, reflexively, mainstream media called BS on it. Oh, that's not real, nothing to see here, folks, because this was coming out during the election. And if you remember, the Hillary Clinton email stuff came out during the election, and many people, including many of the people in media, believe that part and parcel to the reason that Hillary Clinton lost that race was because that information came out just before the presidency or just before the election. Meaning people got a dose of who she was and the things that she was doing, and they recoiled at the last moment. Well, in their heads, well, that's a problem. We don't want people to get information that may cause them to recoil on a particular candidate, just like they did with Hillary Clinton. And so, now that Trump is running it again, the same situation or a similar situation comes up with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and the corrupt business dealings. And so their response is, we just don't show it. Russian propaganda. This isn't real. The AP even comes out and says something like, yeah, we don't do bullshit stories. Twitter banishes the story. And not just banishes the story, puts the New York Post in Twitter jail. Puts New York Post in Twitter jail, saying this story is BS, this story is nonsense. The New York Times comes out with a bunch of attacks on the piece right here. The Post article relied on documents purportedly taken from the computer to try to buttress an unsubstantiated argument peddled by Mr. Giuliani and other Trump supporters that as vice president, Mr. Biden had shaped American foreign policy in Ukraine to benefit his son. Mr. Biden long said he knew nothing about his son's business dealings in Ukraine, but the article suggests that the former vice president met with an advisor to the Ukrainian energy company whose board Hunter Biden sat on, Burisma Holdings. The article referred to an email that advisor Vadim Pozarsky sent to Hunter Biden thanking him for giving him the opportunity to meet his father sometime and to get back together. A Biden campaign spokesman said Mr. Biden's official schedule did not show the meeting between the two men. A lawyer for Hunter Biden, George Mieres, told the New York Post that this purported meeting never happened. And of course, that has to be true because Joe Biden and his lawyer said it. Just to point something out, they never said that the meeting never took place. They never said that. Or, right here, or at the very least, Joe Biden never said that. Right here. A Biden campaign spokesman said Mr. Biden's official schedules did not show the meeting of the two men. Is it possible it just wasn't on his official schedule? Is there a schedule that is not official? I mean, if indeed you're telling me it's his official schedule, then almost by definition, the fact that you're creating that distinction means that there is an unofficial schedule somewhere, and is it possible it was on that? Is it possible he just didn't necessarily write it down because he didn't want any association with the fact that he's hanging out with his son that's a crackhead that's making $50,000 at a corrupt energy company while he is the viceroy of Ukraine? Is that possible to any degree? Is that possible? Is it even likely? Here's another one. This is New York Times again, attacking the story. The Biden campaign on Wednesday rejected a New York Post report about Joseph Biden Jr. and his son Hunter that the nation's leading social media companies deemed so dubious that they limited access on the article's platform. The report, appearing just 3 weeks before the election, was based on material provided by Republican allies of President Trump who have tried for months to tarnish Mr. Biden over his son. It claimed that Elder Biden had met with an advisor to the Ukrainian energy company on whose board Hunter Biden served. It's so ridiculous and ludicrous. We can't show this to anybody. It's such nonsense. It's such fake news. It's such propaganda that we cannot show this to anyone. It is just utterly and entirely nonsensical. Well, fast forward to now. Fast forward to now. Buried in this article, Hunter Biden paid tax bill, but broad federal investigation continues. The Justice Department inquiry into the business dealings of the president's son has remained active, with the grand jury seeking information about payments around the world. All right, let's step into the article a bit. The investigation, which began as a tax inquiry under the Obama administration, widened into 2018 to include possible criminal violations of tax laws, as well as federal lobbying and money laundering rules, according to people familiar with the inquiry. But prosecutors face a number of hurdles to bringing criminal charges, the people familiar with the investigation said, including proving that Mr. Biden intentionally violated Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, which requires disclosure to the Justice Department of lobbying or public relations assistance on behalf of foreign clients. Let's keep going. Right here. The elder Mr. Biden now oversees the Justice Department that is carrying out the investigation, and Hunter Biden, who in recent weeks has pursued a career as a painter, has acknowledged serious drug addiction and other problems. Basically, he throws paint on a canvas. People give him money because his last name is Biden. No more, no less. I don't even think they disclose the people who they give money to. So you can have all sorts of influence peddlers basically giving money, buying artwork for potential influence. I mean, think of what they do in D.C. What they would do in D.C., or what they used to do, is you go to a pop-up place. And because marijuana in D.C. is legal to possess, but illegal to buy, if you don't have a medical card, what they would do is they would say, hey, this pen is for sale for $80. $80. Great ink pen. Fantastic ink pen. Oh, and by the way, if you buy this ink pen for $80, we'll give you this bag of weed for free. On us, because we just like you so much. But again, ink pen, $80. Bag of weed, free. Can I just get the bag of weed free? No, we can't do that. Got to buy the ink pen first. So is this something of a similar situation where, hey, I'm a painter. You could buy this canvas for ridiculous amount of money. Oh, and by the way, my dad is Joe Biden. Let's keep going. I want to keep going to this article. There's the last part that I really want to get to, which is the most important. Let's keep going right here. People familiar with the investigation said prosecutors had examined emails between Mr. Biden and Mr. Archer and others about Burisma and other foreign business activity. Those emails were obtained by the New York Post from a cache of files that appears to have come from a laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden in Delaware repair shop. The email and others in the cache were authenticated by people familiar with them and the investigation. What do you mean? How do you authenticate the emails? How did you do that? What do you mean by authenticate? More importantly, you're now saying that there were emails obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appears to have come from a laptop that was abandoned by Hunter Biden? But I thought you told me for like a year, 2 years now, that was bogus. That was nonsense. I just went through the articles that New York Times was saying nonsense. Russian propaganda. Oh, those things aren't real at all. Those things are so unrealistic that they are in Twitter jail. They have limited access. And because they have limited access, you can trust that that is not something you need to see. Now, Biden is in office. The election is over with. Trump is on the outs. And now we can have a conversation about the reality of that laptop and the reality of those emails and the way that those emails implicate Joe Biden into working with business dealings with his kid, crackhead son, Hunter. Let's keep going. Same article, right here. In some of the emails, Mr. Biden displayed a familiarity with Farah and a desire to wanting to trigger it. In one email, where is it? Right here. And another set of emails examined by prosecutors, Hunter Biden and Mr. Archer discussed inviting foreign business associates, including Burisma executives, to a dinner in April 2015 at a Washington restaurant where Vice President Joe Biden would stop by. It is not clear whether the Burisma executive attended the dinner, although the vice president did make an appearance, according to people familiar with the event. All right. You had an event. A Burisma executive was supposed to come. Biden was there. New York Times is unclear on whether the executive came, even though he said he was going to come. Well, let's go back to an email from the New York Post, since they've now validated the fact that the laptop is real, and they've authenticated in some particular fashion that the emails were legit, and that prosecutors were looking at those emails and using those emails to make a determination on whether or not they're going to charge Hunter Biden, then I could go back and look at the other emails that have now been authenticated by the New York Times as being legit. And there's this. Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's really an honor and a pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, it would be great to meet today for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to your office somewhere around noon or so, before or on my way to the airport. Best. So, what did we learn today? We've learned that the New York Times is often full of shit. We've learned that Hunter Biden is in deep shit. And we've learned that Joe Biden should be, at the very least, investigated with the same veracity and the same degree as Donald Trump was, considering you have evidence that A, he was lying about knowing about his son's business dealings, lying about whether or not he was meeting some of the representatives associated with those business dealings. And at the very least, you have an email that attests to the fact that the dude is basically explicitly saying, thank you for meeting your dad. Meeting your dad. Does Hunter Biden have another dad that I'm aware of? Or is that dad that they're talking about Vice President Joe Biden? Which is it? New York Times, the AP, Reuters, all of these mainstream media outlets, Twitter included, should get on their goddamn knees and apologize to the American public and to the New York Post. The reality of it is they took it upon themselves to withhold information from the American public because they didn't believe the American public could make a choice, or that they shouldn't even get that choice. And what I mean, that the choice that was basically removed from the American public was being able to see information on whether or not the person who they're putting in that office is radically corrupt and have been so for the entirety of their time in political life, and whether or not they're okay with that level of corruption in the context of somebody like Trump. It's not wrong for Trump or his adversaries or allies to put out information that puts a knife in Joe Biden. Joe Biden was basically doing the same thing. The media has spent 3 or 4 years basically putting a knife in Donald Trump on something that was a complete conspiracy theory. So, not only is what media was talking about for 4 fucking years a conspiracy theory, what they did not want to talk about, what they wanted to hide, and what they wanted to obfuscate and whitewash ended up being entirely and completely true. And the fact that it's true is problematic for one president, Joe Biden. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I am going to say subscribe. Yay, Jamarl, good. You're up, right? Good. You're on your soapbox back up. Put this towards wall hanging and the echo down and bring back the Trek post. Yes. So my Trek stuff is upstairs. The echo in the basement, that is a problem, and I'm not quite sure how to solve that one yet. But trust me, I'm looking into it. Today was the first day I've started doing videos, and so I wasn't quite sure how these videos was going to turn out, a different environment and everything else. Now I know that the echo is part of the mix. I'm going to have to find some way to kind of deal with it. But I'm going to say thank all of you. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.